Hello there, and welcome to our first video in our Systems of Equations unit. So in this first one, we're going to be solving systems of equations graphically. So we're going to look at a couple little notes here off the bat, and then we're going to get into a couple examples. And this isn't going to be a really long lesson, it's actually going to be quite short. So what we're going to be doing in this unit, actually you've done previously in Math 10. The only thing new is going to be we're going to have some quadratic stuff. In Math 10, you never saw quadratics. You only had linear stuff. It was all lines. So looking at what a system is going to consist of two or more equations involving common variables. So they all have x's or they all have y's. And the solution to a system is the point of intersection of the graphs of the equations. So point of intersection, that is just where the lines cross. So I'll just draw a quick example of something like that over here. So we got our x-axis, our y-axis. Maybe we have some line that goes something like that. And then we also have a parabola that goes like this, pointing down. We can see that it crosses right here and right here. So both of those would be solutions. So any intersection or crossing point, that's where you will find your solutions. And then the last point, it says the solution is an ordered pair that satisfies both equations. So all that means is that you're going to have some answer like this. It's going to have an x and then a y, and it's going to satisfy both equations because if you go to verify, if you plug it back in, it will work in both equations. Next thing we have under a system of a linear to quadratic equation. So this is what we're going to be dealing with first. It's going to be linear, so a straight line, and then quadratic. It's going to be that parabola or horseshoe shape. So that type of system is going to be a linear equation and a quadratic equation involving the same variables. And as I just said, if we were to graph that system, it's going to involve a line and a parabola. So what I want you to do is try to first brainstorm all the different types of solutions that you could get. I'll give you a hint. There's going to be 3 of them. So draw some random lines, kind of like what I did up here. So you can see already with this one has 1, 2 solutions. Maybe try to come up with some other ideas, moving the line at different angles, the parabola up and down. See if you can figure out what the other 2 ways that we can have solutions. So the first one we looked at up here, it had 2 different solutions. So that one is going to be behind option number 3 here. So we can see we got our line, our linear equation, and then we have our quadratic equation here, and they cross once, twice, so 2 solutions. Another type of solution, and you might have found this, we're going to look behind box number 1. You could have your line not even passing through the parabola. So with one like this, that one actually has no solutions. And then behind box number 2, this is the case where your line touches perfectly on one part of the parabola and only once. So with this one you have 1 solution. So we're just going to write those down below here. So the first one, that one had no point of intersection, so no solution. The middle one, it had 1 point of intersection, so 1 solution. And then the last one, that one had 2 points of intersection, so it has 2 solutions. Okay, so now that we know the different types of solutions, we're actually going to get into solving some of these. So we got 2 examples here, and we're going to be doing this all in our calculator. So to enter this into our calculator, we need to write our equations as y equals. So with this first equation here, if I wanted to get that one into y equals, I could move over the 3 and move over the 4x, but it's actually going to be easier if I just move over this negative y, because when it moves over, it's now going to be positive y over here. So I'm going to have positive y all by itself on one side, and then on the other side it was 4x and a plus 3. So there's my first equation. I'll do the same thing with this one. If I move that over, it's going to turn into positive y. So I'll have y all by itself, and then 2x squared was on the left, and an 8x, and a plus 3. So what I can do next is get out my graphing calculator, and we'll go into y equals, and then we'll type these in. And now that we have those typed in, we can click graph. So we have our line, that's this first one here, that was just a linear equation. And then this parabola, that is this quadratic equation. So it looks like it crosses once here and then another time there. So to find those intersection points, what I can do is I can click second, trace, and then option number 5 is where they intersect. So number 5, and then what we're going to do is we're going to find this bottom one first. So scroll closest to that one, and it'll say, are you on the first curve? Click enter. And then are you on the second curve? If you'll click left and right, you can see we're now on the parabola. So we are on the second curve. Click enter. And then guess. And we'll click enter one more time. And then we get -2 and -5. So that's one answer. We'll write that down below in a sec. And then to get this other one, we'll do it again. So second, trace, option number 5. But this time move closer to that point. So all the way over here. And then click enter, enter, enter. And then it finds it, so we have 0 and 3. So I'm just going to move my calculator over. So the graph that we got, I'm just going to put that here now. And then the two solutions that we got are just below here. It was 0 and 3, and -2 and -5. So example 1 is all done. For example 2, if you wanted to try this one on your own, you're welcome to do so. Just pause the video. So again, though, with this one, we are going to move the y over so that it's by itself on the one side. So with that one, we're going to get y equals, and then there's just an x and a +1 on the left side. So we're going to have x plus 1. And then with this one, the y is already positive. So rather than moving it over, I'm going to move everything else over to the other side. And when they move over, they're going to change sign. So I'm going to have y equals, and then the x squared moved over, so it's going to be -x squared. -6x moved over, so it's now +6x, and then +3 moved over, so it's now -3. So I am now going to type both of those into my calculator. So we'll go to y equals, we can clear the ones that we had in there from before, and then type these in. I'm just going to make a note of when you type this one in, you have to put in negative. You can't use minus, your calculator will give you an error. So negative and then the rest of it. Okay, so we got those typed in, then we can click graph. So there is the linear equation. And then our quadratic equation comes up and it crosses once, twice. So to find those again, second, trace, option number 5, move closest to the 1 point, enter, 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 and we get 1 and 2. So then we can find our next point, second trace, option number 5. This time move closer to the other point, and then enter, 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 and we get 4 and 5. So I'm just going to put up the graph that we just got here, and then the answer that we got was 1 and 2 and 4 and 5. So those two ones were for a linear equation and a quadratic equation. We had the line and then the parabola. Next, what we're going to look at is where we have a system of quadratic to quadratic. So this is a parabola and a parabola. So it says it is going to be two quadratic equations involving the same variables, and the graph is going to involve two parabolas. So again, if you want to try to draw out different parabolas pointing up, down at different heights to figure out what you could get for the different types of solutions, you can try that now. So the first type of solution, if you tried that and drew some out, is something like this. So we have one parabola pointing down, another parabola pointing up, and they never cross, so there's no intersection point. So with something like that, it has no point of intersection, so it has no solution. The second type of solution we could get is where the parabolas maybe both point up and we get one intersection point. You could have the same kind of thing, but the parabolas point down. That could also give you one solution. Or you could even have something like this, where one points up and another points down, and they just happen to touch perfectly at their vertex. So you could have something like that, but not likely. So for all of these, they just have one intersection point, which means it's going to have one solution. And then the last type of solution is where we have two different intersection points. So maybe one points up, another points down, they intersect at two different spots. So that tells us that we're going to have two solutions. So again, we're going to do two examples for these. So again, the only way we can enter it into our calculator is if we write it in y equals. So I'm going to move this y over, move this y over. So with the first one, I'm going to have y equals, and then everything is still on that other side. So it's 2x squared minus 16x. And then this negative 35, I'm going to move that over to there. So that's going to change to a positive 35. For my second equation, I moved over the y, so it's now positive. And then on the other side, there was a 2x squared, a minus 8x. And then again, I'm going to move this negative 11 over, so it's going to become positive 11. So we'll get out our graphing calculator, go back into y equals, clear the last ones that we had, and then we can type these in. So now that we have that entered, we can click Graph, look at our graph. So we got one parabola, and then our second parabola. So they both point up, and it looks like they intersect right there. So we're going to find that. We can click second, trace, intersect number 5, move over to the point. So we get to it right there, and then just click enter, enter, enter. And we get 3 and 5. Now, if you want to make sure that there's no other solution, what you could do is you could click zoom and then out, just so you can see more of the graph, but they actually don't intersect at some other point. So we only get this one solution. So our answer is 3 and 5. So I'm just going to put up here first the graph that we got. And then our answer for that, just down below here, that was 3 and 5. Moving to example 2, if you again want to try to do this one on your own, you can pause the video and then try to do this one. So we got to get these y's isolated to be able to put them into our calculator. So this one's already positive y. So I'm going to move this 16x over to the other side and this 2x squared over to the other side. So I'm going to have y equals 2x squared moves over and it's negative. Same with the 16x, it's now negative 16x. And then we already had minus 26 already over there. For the second one, this one, the y is negative. So I'm going to move that over and that'll make it positive. And then I'll move this 19 over, and that'll make it positive. So I'm going to have positive y on the one side, and then x squared is on the left with an 8x. And then I also moved over the 19. It was negative, but now it's going to be positive because I moved it over. So we now have our two equations. We can go in, clear out our old ones, and then we will enter the new ones. Again, just reminder, if this is a leading negative, you have to click the negative button. So we have those put in. We can click graph. So there's our first parabola. Then our second one comes down and it intersects here twice. So again, second, trace, option number 5. We'll move closest to one of these. We'll do the left one here first. And then once we're close to it, just click enter, enter, enter. So we get negative 5 and 4. And then we'll do our second one. So second trace, option number 5. And then scroll over to that one. And then click enter, enter, enter. And for that one, we get negative 3 and 4. So I'm just going to put up the graph over here that we got. And the solutions that we got, it was negative 5 and 4 and negative 3 and 4. So these questions, when we solve them graphically, the only hard part that we're really going to have is just moving or rearranging our equations into y equals. Because after we have that, our calculator is going to be doing all of the work. So these ones we definitely want to do well on a quiz. So that was our last example that we had. At the bottom here, I just got our textbook questions. So we're working on page 435.